Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm sorry to have bored all of your students with that long list of things.
We need to provide some context so the students know who they are meeting. It's very important, and thank you. I will begin right now with my kids.
Okay, so can I repeat that question if I think it's the right one? You tell me if I have it right. It's, You are, the young man said, you are such a multidisciplinary person. You're involved in music, sports, writing, education, charity. When did you develop all these passions? Is that the question? Okay. Well, I mean, they didn't all happen at the same time. You're taking a lifetime of mine and putting it all together. I think if you took anybody and added up everything that they were interested in or they did in their whole lives, it would probably be a long list. I started in music when I was a teenager. I was in bands, and I really just wanted to be a musician. And I was a musician professionally over in Europe and in New York. While I was in New York as a musician, I wasn't really doing very well, to be honest with you. I mean, I was playing, but I wasn't really advancing. I wasn't getting anywhere, just playing the same nightclubs and piano bars and things like that. So I had time during the day, and I wanted to, try to explore something else. It's something that was creative. And I saw an advertisement for a newspaper, a free newspaper, said that they could use some help with writing if people had spare time. And I had spare time during the day because I was working as a musician at night. So I went over there and I volunteered, and it turned out that I had some aptitude for writing. I didn't even know that I did. And I began to really enjoy it, even though I wasn't getting paid, which is a good lesson there, that you don't have to get paid for everything to learn something. In fact, sometimes you learn it a lot better if you volunteer at a place. And so I started to go into writing. I ended up going back to graduate school and got a master's degree in that. And while I still love music and still wrote music and everything, I started to work in journalism. So that became the writing. And then as the years passed, I started to write books, and then I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie and spent time with my old dying professor who taught me many lessons about life just before you're going to die. And that kind of inspired my charity interests. And ever since then, a lot of my time has been dominated by charitable works and things here in Detroit and around the world. And so each one sort of developed as a result of the other one. I wouldn't have gone into writing if I hadn't gone into music and wasn't succeeding. I wouldn't have gone into charity things if I hadn't gone to write Tuesdays with Morrie and sort of had my eyes open to that. I wouldn't have gone into some of the other areas if the charity stuff hadn't opened. So like much of life, one thing sort of led to another.
Bonjour, hello. My name is Cynthia Texera, and I'm a French immersion teacher at Robert Adams Middle School, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. I would like to ask my questions on behalf of my French immersion students, premièrement en français and then in English. Pouvez-vous nous parler un peu de votre livre Finding Chika? Quelles sont vos pensées et vos sentiments à propos de l'adoption? Et est-ce que vous pouvez nous parler un peu de votre connexion avec l'Haïti? Can you tell us about Finding Chika? Your thoughts and opinions about and feelings about adoption, and can you also tell us a bit more about your connection to Haiti?
Yeah. So this is a little picture of, I don't have to look very far. I got a lot of pictures of Chika in my office. So Chika was born 3 days before the earthquake, the terrible earthquake, which ended up bringing me to Haiti. And 3 days after she was born, her house collapsed, and she survived just by luck because it fell around her, but not on top of her. And so she was a very special kid from the day she was born. And her mother died giving birth to her baby brother a couple years later. She died because there wasn't any doctor present, and there wasn't any doctor present because there's never any doctors present for poor women in Haiti. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and the second poorest country in the world. And so doctors are a luxury, and something went wrong and there was no doctor there, and she died. And so Chika was brought to live with us at the orphanage that we operate when she was about 2.5 years old. And she was very funny and very headstrong and, everything that everything she wanted, she asked for, and she bossed all the other kids around. And then when she was 5 years old, unfortunately, we discovered she had developed a brain tumor. And we were told that there was nobody in Haiti that could help her. There were no doctors that could deal with it. So we brought her to America thinking that, well, all right, we'll bring her to American medicine and, it'll work out. But it turned out that American medicine couldn't help her either. What she had was fatal. And they told us that she would die within four months. And we should just take her back to Haiti and let her die. But I couldn't see doing that, and neither could my wife. We'd known Chika since she was basically a baby, and so I knew that she was a fighter. I knew she was born tough enough to survive an earthquake when she was 3 days old. And so I said, if she'll fight, we'll fight. And so that began what turned out to be 2 years, where we traveled around the world trying to find a cure for what Chika had, her brain tumor. And she lived 2 years, not 4 months. And during that time, we really became a family. It was an unusual family because my wife and I are a little too old to be having 5-year-old kids. But we had her just the same, and she slept in our bedroom and a little bed in front of ours. And it really was an amazing experience. And my feelings about adoption are, wrapped up in all of that. And that I feel that there's no right or wrong way to make a family. There are many, many ways to make a family. There's the traditional way, where you have kids. There's the foster family way. There's the adoption way. There's what happened to us when we were basically old enough to be grandparents, and suddenly we had this child that we had to take care of, and she became our family. But the most important and only really important ingredient for family is love. And we had that. And so I think as long as there's love, all forms of adoption should be encouraged. There are so many children in the world that are waiting to be adopted, need to be adopted, and it's just red tape or bureaucracy that or expense that gets in the way. And so, I encourage and have great empathy for people who open their hearts to children of the world who are needy, because there's so many of them. Every year we take in 5 or 6 new children to our orphanage. And every year I hear at least 50 or 60 stories about people who want their kids to come to us. And I have to turn away 10 for every one that I can take. And it's very hard to turn people away when they really need help. So I'm very much, an advocate for adoption, and I see it firsthand. I'm in Haiti every single month. As far as my connection to Haiti, I didn't know anything about it when I got there, and now I've been there 137 times. So I think I know a few things about it. We have 50 plus kids that we raise in our orphanage. We don't adopt them out. We just raise them. They go to school there. I'm very involved with the Haitian people and culture. They're amazing people, amazing resiliency, amazing strength, great humor, love of children and people and song. And I think Haiti's been a very unlucky country over the years in many ways. Natural disasters, corruption in government, things that have kept people poor. And that's why I'm there to try to help. But I am honored to be in Haiti. I'm blown away by the people there. And moi qui parle créole kounya, et si vous parlez français, peut-être vous attendez que les moi parler créole, moi servi quelques paroles qui semblaient tant que paroles na français. Ça raison pour ça français t'es commencé avant créole. Creole to développé après français. So Creole was a language that people the French had taken over Haiti for many years, and they enslaved a lot of the people there. And the slaves kind of developed this sort of slang language that was half French, and because they weren't going to school, and so it was half French and half kind of Spanish or Creole. And so it's kind of you could probably hear a little bit of French in what I was speaking to you, and you could probably
totally understand. I get it. Yeah. Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Pas problème.
Is it true that someone should read for many years before they start their writing, so they have something to talk about when they write?
Well, yes, it's true. The first part is true, in my opinion, but not because they have something to talk about because they write. It's just that. Think of it this way. Would you start playing music if you'd never heard music? How could you? You wouldn't even know what to do, right? Maybe someone put a piano in front of you and start banging on notes, but you wouldn't really know any songs to play, right? But you have listened to music, then all of a sudden you can play it. Well, it's the same thing with writing. First, you have to read in order to really be able to understand how to write. But you don't have to read for 30 years before you write anything, not at all. As soon as you begin to read, you're starting to learn how to write at the same time. But I highly recommend a heavy, heavy dose of reading of everything. Even if you want to be a sports writer, you shouldn't just read sports writing. You should read everything. If you want to be a poet, you shouldn't just read poetry. You should read everything, because everything will seep into your creative mind and your brain. And a piece of poetry you may read may help you become a better business writer. An article about politics may help you to become a better novelist. There are all kinds of sort of inputs that come out in different ways in your writing. So yes, I'm a big encourager of reading and reading before you write, but don't have to wait. I waited a long time. I really didn't write until I was in my 20s. And I wouldn't recommend that for any of you. I recommend starting at your ages.
Do you do a lot of deep research?
Well, considering my second book and novel was called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, I would have to say that I don't always write what I know, because I haven't actually been there. So I would say that there's plenty of fiction in my head. A lot of it comes creatively through my mind. But yes, I always do research for my novels. I do research for my nonfiction too. I've written 3 books of nonfiction: Tuesdays with Morrie, Have a Little Faith, and Finding Chika. Those were all true stories that involved me in my life. So I knew, the things to do. But even with those, I researched them. With The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, for example, it takes place at an amusement park. And a man dies at an amusement park trying to save a little girl from an accident. And he goes to heaven and finds out that his life that he thought that didn't have any meaning actually had a lot of meaning. But still, I had to research amusement parks. I had to learn the terminology. I had to learn how to describe them. I went to amusement parks. I met with people at the amusement parks to kind of get the feel for it and the sounds of it and the smells of it. So you should always, if you really want to, describe things and you have the opportunity, you should always go and experience them. Always go and talk to people about them, because as much as your imagination can take you, reality helps spur your imagination. And, when I went to the amusement park, for example, I said, well, I want to create an accident on one of these tower drop rides, where they people get in and then it drops really fast. What could I do? And the man there actually said, well, the worst thing that would happen would be if a cable snapped. And I said, well, how could a cable snap? He said, well, something would have to cut it. And what could cut it? Well, I don't know. It'd have to be something in there for a long time. Well, like what? And we went over and we looked at where the cables were. I said, boy, there's not much opening there. It was only about this big. And he said, yeah, it'd have to be something really small and metal that would start cutting the cable. I said, well, what about like a key? And he said, yeah, actually, if a key fell in there and got wedged and the cable kept going around it, the key would rip the cable and eventually the cable would snap and no one would know it. And that's what I ended up writing in the book. But I only got that idea from going out and talking to him. So research is very important. Okay, what message you have for librarians and teachers and for school and school division administrators about promoting literacy? Well, okay, there's several questions in there. So for librarians, my message would just be to never forget how important you are. When I was a kid, that's how I learned how to read. It wasn't the days where everybody could order from Amazon and you had books in your house. There weren't even that many bookstores to go to. We went to the library, and the librarians were the people who showed us different books that we would like to read. And if not for them, I probably never would have become a reader. They recommended certain things. And at the same time, I had one librarian who told me that a book was too hard for me. And I was only about 7 years old, and I pulled it off the shelf, and I wanted to read it because it was called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it had a big submarine on it. I thought that was going to be a great book. So I tried to check it out, and she said, no, this is too hard for you. You should go to the cartoon section. And so I did what I was told. I got Curious George book. And when I came out, my mother came to pick me up. And when I came out, I came into the car, I had the Curious George book. And she said, you've read that 5 times already. I said, I know, but the librarian wouldn't let me take out the book I wanted to take out. She said, why not? And I said, she said it was too hard. And my mother hit the brakes on the car and stormed back to the library and went storming into the library, banged on the desk. She said, are you the woman that told my son that a book was too hard for him? Never tell a child that a book is too hard for him, and never this child. And like the woman was so like, oh, and so my mother said, where's the book? And it was like right behind her, and she just grabbed, I think we stole it basically, and we left. And, that was my mother teaching me that reading is critical and it's really important. And librarians should always encourage kids to read, not discourage them, not tell them something's too tough, because, I learned that day how vital reading can be. If it would make my mom that upset, then it had to be pretty important. Teachers, I stand in awe of teachers. I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie as a love letter to teachers, basically. And for me, teachers, we have society all wrong. Teachers should be the highest paid profession that we have. They affect the children. I see the thumbs ups going up. They affect the future. What affects our future more than teachers? And it's a thankless job frequently, and it requires an inordinate amount of patience. And, I do a lot of teaching myself with our kids in Haiti. I salute teachers every day and try to support them in every way I can. And I've dedicated a lot of my books to teachers. And as far as promoting literacy, I've seen some good programs where sometimes they've chosen books where the whole school reads the book and then everybody talks about it. And I've done that a little bit with our kids in Haiti. I give them every month, I give them one book to read, and all the older kids, I say, I want you to all read it. And I try to pick enjoyable books. That's important. You don't want to pick really, really hard books, but they enjoy them. And now they have something in common. When you promote a book for everybody to read, you're not just getting them to read, you're giving them a common language where they can all talk about the book, because they all have that in common. It's a little bit like if everybody goes and sees an Avenger movie, then everybody talks about the Avengers movie, right? Well, same thing with the book, if you could promote it that way. So that's something I would suggest.
Our principal is making the announcements. Can we move to the next question, Mitch, that you have in front of you?
Yes. What authors inspire you? Do you have suggestions of authors we should try to interview for this interview series? I read so much that I really can't pick one author in any way. But as far as other authors that you should get to speak to you, I'm in a band of writers, and they range from Stephen King to Amy Tan to Scott Turow, Dave Barry, Ridley Pearson, James McBride. I would recommend any of them, and you can tell them that Mitch said you should call them and ask them to do this, and they'll say, "Well, I'll get him next time at band practice." So all of them are very good. Amy, James McBride, they have good stories to tell. Greg Isles, he's in there. He's got a good story to tell. Dave Barry's very funny. Any of them, I highly recommend.
Evelyn will try to read. Read here. Read loud. 7, right? No, 7. Your love for sports, how it became a part of your books, and can you tell us about your sports podcast?
Right. So I was like a lot of, boys in America. I played sports. I liked watching it, but I wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't nuts. I didn't memorize everything there was about it. And when I was in graduate school, I needed to make some money. And so they had a job on the board. I have a little job board where you can pick up some money, work part-time. It was a magazine. And so I went down to Sport Magazine and I worked there and I wrote some sports stories and things like that. And then when I tried to get other jobs after I graduated, every time I tried to get like a reporting job or a feature writing job, they would always say, "Oh, you have a lot of sports here. Why don't you write sports?" And one time they ended up offering me a job in sports because even though I didn't apply for it, because they saw the other things that I had written about sports, I said, "All right, I'll start doing that." And then I really came to love writing about sports, not because I'm crazy about sports so much, but because sports has everything in it. If you really think about it, it's got agony, it's got ecstasy, it's got every kind of diverse population. It's got every kind of country involved. It's uniform. People get very excited about it, but there are a lot of issues in it as well, from money to politics to race to society. And so you really get to write about everything. And yet you also get to go to games, and you get to watch some really interesting action, which is a lot more fun than sitting around watching politicians sit around the table. So I found it to be something I really enjoyed and I had an aptitude for, and I've been doing it ever since. Then I got on television on ESPN and did a program for about 25 years called The Sports Reporters. And we've now turned that into a podcast. It's also called The Sports Reporters. So that's the podcast part of that. You're welcome.
Pablo. Just one moment, Pablo, because Pablo wanted to ask, we are working with so many other charities. Can you share with us about some of them and how we can support their work?
Okay, thank you for asking. Well, I operate an orphanage in Haiti. I'm there every month. I have been for the last 11 and a half years. And we have about 50 kids. We take care of them from beginning to end, and all of them go to school there. They go to school 7 hours a day, 4 in English, 3 in French. And all of them have college scholarships promised to them if they get the grade. And so far, we've got 4 who are already up here in America in college. And then they're going to go back to Haiti and make their country a better place. And my goal is to do that for all of them. You can help that by going to havefaithhaiti.org, havefaithhaiti.org, and it's all there. I also run 9 charities here in Detroit under something called Stay Detroit. I run everything from daycare center for poor families who need to drop their kids off in order for someone to go to work, to a medical clinic for homeless children and their mothers, to a rec center, after-school rec center that has basketball, football, baseball, dancing, a recording studio, all this, and academics, veterans programs, seniors programs, homeless programs, and all that you can find under saydetroit.org, saydetroit.org. And I also run a program in the Philippines for after the terrible tsunami, and I had been up there, I started something called Dry Libraries to build 10 libraries in the destroyed area of Tacloban, and we're about six and a half libraries into that, and we have about 3.5 more to build. And that's drylibraries.org. So, or you just go to mitchalbom.com. It's all there. I hate to promote stuff, but thank you. Can you
tell us about Human Touch?
Human Touch.
Yeah, Human Touch. So Human Touch was something I did last year to try to raise money for my city here in Detroit to fight COVID-19. We were really taking it bad. At one point, we led the nation in cases, and we have a very poor population, a very large African-American population, and they were really taking it on the chin. And so I wanted to raise money to help out. I didn't really know how to do it fast. And so I thought, well, the best way I can raise money is to write a book. So I decided to write a book online, and I wrote it every week. I put up another 3 or 4 chapters, and it was a story about a neighborhood in Michigan where I live and how it was affected by COVID, except it was fictional. And it was just all these 4 houses on this one street corner, and how the people in those 4 houses interacted with one another as a virus came in, and they went from being really friendly neighbors to kind of distrusting one another, to being scared, and somebody dies and somebody gets sick and all that. And so every week I wrote another couple chapters, and I was only writing 1 week ahead of what people were reading. So it was a pretty tough way to write a novel. And it went on for about 8 weeks. And we didn't ask for any money. We just asked for people to donate. So anyone could get it for free. You can go and get it for free right now. If you go to humantouch.com, I think it is. And you can read it. And then we just asked people for donations. And people were kind enough. They gave us donations. We made over $800,000. And we used all of it here in Detroit. We're still using it. We vaccinated people. We gave tests. We did PPE. We built homeless shelters for people who had it. We took care of seniors. I mean, it did a great deal of good and continues to do so. So if you want to read it, you can just go online. You don't even have to order it or anything. You just read it right on. There's some beautiful illustrations. And you can also get the Audible book of it. If you like to listen to audiobooks, you can get that for free on audible.com. But it's Human Touch I think it's humantouchstory.com. Again, if you go to my website, you can find it all out there. I never remember anything. I should, but I don't. I'm terrible at web addresses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our last question is Joshua.
So my question will be, we will see with China coast to coast. How children to get the plan. 21% has a separate small contribution. All proceeds from the book will go to raising money for indigenous communities access to water. We thought one possible idea for you would be to record a special video of you reading an excerpt from one of your books. Can you contact me to discuss running this project?
Sure. That's a short answer to a long question. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your time today. We know you have a big schedule, and you're involved in a million things, and we want to learn more and share this with our network and support you with all our hearts. And we're so deeply touched by your generosity to help grow kids' awareness of the world around them, and empathy and communication and confidence to be brave enough to come in front of the legend of writing, and to begin this series of authors. We couldn't think of a better person to start this series, and we're so incredibly grateful. And I think everyone here wants to extend our thanks to you, and thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, merci.
It was unclear. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to talking to you guys again. And yeah, get in touch with me or my agent, and we'll record that message for you.
We will. Thank you. God bless you. Take care.
Guys, take care. Bye-bye, all.
Au revoir.
Thank you so much.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.